I'm Sandy Winnette, professional psychic, teacher, lecturer here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have done readings and helped thousands of people from all walks of life for well over 20 years. I have special stories I've never shared with anyone, and this is the first time these stories will be told for the public. One in particular is a story that changed my life, that actually brought me to the public to be able to do all the readings that I have done. I had a UFO experience. Some would call it a UFO experience. I did not actually see a flying saucer, but I had a white light experience at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had left work, and I was driving down Randall Mill Road in the HEB area, and back in the late 60s and the early 70s, it was a heavily wooded area, and there was no one else around. As I drove the car to pick up my husband at the time, and he got off work at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a light that was traveling along the side of the car. So as I was driving down the road, the light was here parallel to me. As I looked out the window, I noticed that the light was much larger than I thought it should be. And I thought, my goodness, at first I thought it was a large star. It kept getting brighter. I continued to drive, but it had my attention. And I'm a little adventurous. So as the light was continuing to go along next to me, I slowed down my driving. And I pulled off to the side just a little bit. I didn't come to a complete stop, but I slowed down. It slowed down. And I reached down and I took my light switch that used to, you'd punch them in and out, and I blinked it in and out, and the lights went on and off, and the light that was in the sky also blinked on and off. That began a series of back and forth as I blinked my lights on and off. It blinked its lights on and off. It began to change color. It went from reds to more of a pinky red tone and then back to white. I turned my lights off for just a split second. It turned its lights off and it didn't come back on. At that point, it startled me just a little bit. I began to be concerned. I thought, what is this? And I pulled off to the side of the road. Then the light came back on, but when it came on, it was much larger and it was closer to me. And at that point, I speeded up just a little on the road, went out to pick up my husband. He was working at a manufacturing plant at the time. And as I pulled up on the grounds where he was going to come out, he walked out. I got out of the car. And at that point, when I looked up into the sky, I saw the light. It was over my head. But it began to do motions, and excuse my hand motions, but in order to explain to you my experience, this light began to just make all kinds of jig-jags in the sky. And then it came down close and then went right straight back out into the universe. When it did this, it turned a red. And the closest thing I can explain to you in the color is that if you took a laser beam, and at that point in time, here in the United States, I do not believe there was anything like that. I have never seen anything move so fast. It literally was zoom, 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 just like this, and then back far away and came closer. There was a person that was riding in the car with me, and this is important. The reality is there was a person in the car with me that I was taking home from work also. We went to pick up my husband. We picked up my husband. He saw it. He got in the car. I was in the front seat next to him. The passenger was in the back seat. All of us had this experience. In the experience, with my husband, myself, and the passenger, we were young. We were excited about the light. Why was it there with us? And having an adventurous personality, we wanted to explore it further. As we left, I was in the front seat then. At this time, I was not in the driver's seat, but then I was in the front seat with my husband driving, and my friend was in the back seat. We proceeded back down the same path where I had just come from. And at that point, this light was kind of doing a back and forth over the vehicle from side to side. My husband pulls off the side of the road. He said, let's see what happens if we just pull off the road. We pulled off the road, and it was so heavily wooded at that point with very tall trees and just a woodsy area. In Randall, anyone who knows the Randall Mill Road area knows how wooded it was back then. When we pulled off the side of the road, The light came over just ahead of us. In other words, say, here's the car. The light comes up ahead of us in the trees, and we could see it out of the window, looking out like this. And the light began to come down slowly. There was absolutely no sound, none whatsoever through this whole experience. The light began to come down as it hit the treetops, and it came down. It was moving down inside of what was the trees. At this point, we panicked. My husband panicked. I was scared. Passenger was scared. Let's get out of here. Backed up the car, and my husband literally, who I was married, I'm not married to him anymore, and I have to tell the humorous side, it's the one thing we agree on over the years. He just hit the floorboard, and we just were flying down the road because we were so frightened at that point what would happen next. We didn't know for sure what was going to happen. And out of fear, we left the situation. When we got home, we stood out in the front yard at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, searching the sky. We searched the sky, and I searched the sky, looking for it. And there was a sadness that came over me because I felt like I had missed an opportunity. Or did I? And at that point, the story that I remember is different than what I know happened, because the story that happened is what I have just told you. Yet in my memory, I was driving down the road. We'll go back to Randall Mill Road. I'm driving down the road to pick up my husband at that point. In my memory, how I think of it, there was no one with me. I was by myself in that car. Yet logically, I know I wasn't. As I drove down the road, the communication began to take place, the blinking of lights back and forth and back and forth. I pulled off the side of the road. I turned the lights off. It turned its lights off. We sat there. And then I turned my lights on. It turned its lights on. And there was a communication that was taking place, and I was very much at peace with it. And I'm still very much at peace with it. There was so much love that was generated from that experience into my heart, into what I feel, and what has changed my life today. That the common sense, the logic of a UFO, the logic of, is there someone out there? Can we have these UFO experiences? Or can we have these loving experiences? UFO is something we tagged it with. I have no doubt in my mind that there is life beyond this planet. I do believe that I had contact with that. Is it a human form, a human life? No. It is an energy field. And it is something beyond our understanding and our human element today. It was then, and it still is today. Fear is an illusion created by man for man to fear. And that day, that fear crept in and frightened all of us. And at the same time, something happened inside of me that made my world open up in a different way. Was I kidnapped? Did anything happen like we hear on these stories? I don't think so. And if it did, I have no memory of it. I only know that my experience was loving. It brought about an ESP, a knowing feeling. The birds know when to fly south. A bear knows when to hibernate. And so do we have these special instincts if we will just use them. And from that experience, it opened those doorways for me. And it opened up doorways into dreams, into vivid dreams of color and knowing and predictions, clairvoyance, paranormal, metaphysical. All of the words that we think of, we read about, began to happen in my life. I was already a spiritual woman. I was a spiritual young lady. I was a spiritual child. And that night, when I pulled over, I was by myself. When I went on to pick up my husband, in my memory, at that point, there was someone else with me. But prior to that, I seemed to be alone. And that UFO experience was one I will cherish my whole life. I always have. I've had a few people tell me over the years, Sandy, why don't you tell the story? I think because of how people view things. Is that important to me? Of course it is. I'm a business professional person. I'm a woman. I didn't want people laughing at me. And at the same time, I would tell the story. I think today the reason that I'm sharing the story with you, I know the reason I'm sharing it is because it's time. It's time to tell the story. It's time for the world to have changes. The messages that I received from the experience were all loving and caring. The spaceship itself, if you will look at the medallion around my neck, and it is two-sided, and it represents a star in the universe from another galaxy. Because there is life in other parts of our universe and our galaxies, doesn't necessarily mean that they want to communicate all the time. And if you stop and think about it, why would they? The intelligence that we have here today, and the fact that we have had UFO experiences, and there's too many, numerous experiences that people have had to discount them, simply say that they are here. Perhaps they're here with us. Perhaps they're walking with us, around us. And perhaps they're not. We can't discount it. We can't prove it. Only each person that's had the experience can speak their experience with it. Out of that experience on that night, many years ago, also came this picture right here. And there was a lady that was sitting across from me who was what you would call a spirit artist. And she was from out of state. I had taken a poster board that day and put it up behind me, and I left a place for a picture. And I wasn't even sure what I was going to put there. I thought, should I put a picture of myself? What should I put there? And when I got there, she looked over and she said, I'm receiving psychic information for you, if you would like to have it. I said, certainly, and I went and sat down with her. And she was an artist that did charcoals. Now, her artwork all had Indian feathers, and they were big features, and she said, I have to tell you, I have to make the features much smaller and very different than what I'm used to doing. And she kind of closed her eyes, and she began doing this spirit art work that she was doing with her charcoals. And she said, it's very important that the background is green. When the artist was doing this in charcoal, she said that the information that she was receiving was that if the being, the energy field, or whatever was in the light, wanted me to be able to communicate, wanted to be able to communicate with me, and had done so, and was trying to. But it would be easier for me, in a human form, to be able to have a vision of someone that was similar to myself, because I could not look upon the energy field of what this was. So this was the vision that it took on according to this psychic spirit art, and one that I'm comfortable with. The 8-pointed star comes point to point completely around the disc, if you'll notice, on the gold as well as the silver. These points that touch the end represent a star in another universe so far away that's beyond our comprehension at this point in time. And this disc is around his neck. This is the design that was on the ship. This represents the galaxy far, far away, and a sun that is far, far away. And oh, my stars, I do wear them. I have one, it's a charm, and I wear it in silver. I'm never without them. And I have one on my that hangs from my dashboard over my rear view mirror, so that I see it all the time. What these do for me is they give me hope for the future. They remind me of an experience that was a wonderful experience. And very often I hear people talk about UFO experiences or aliens, and with such fearfulness. And I had nothing but love, peace, tranquility, and a sense of belonging. And that's something I hope we all share. When the day ended and I took the picture home to hang it on my wall, I realized when I went into my workroom, which was my study room that I did psychic readings in, that the background of my wall was green. It was the exact same shade of green as what the artist had painted here, and she said it was very important. That told me that, yes, I was still having communication years after this experience. The other thing that happened is that I had a young daughter who was also having UFO experiences. She was having night dreams of aliens coming into the house. And she was waking and seeing these experiences. They were never frightening. She was just aware of visitors. The UFO dreams that I have had over the years are numerous, too numerous to go into. But this is an experience I wanted to share with you today. Credibility is important. I've had many years of teaching and lecturing and reading for thousands, literally thousands of people. I'm respected in this psychic world. And I'm telling you the story today because I'm telling you the truth. This happened, it's real, it's still real, and it's still happening. And those of you who have these experiences know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're listening to this here today, I know there's a reason. Just yesterday, an insurance man. The day before that, a businessman, telling them about the experience that I was going to do this today, had also had a UFO experience. There are many, many business people today that are professional people that have had these experiences, but they don't share them with anyone because they're afraid of what other people will think. And today it's time. Some of the predictions that I have received over the years, some of them are beautiful spiritual messages as well, not just necessarily a black and white, cold prediction that may or may not happen. And who cares about a prediction? Some people laugh at them, and the only time they have any resource that anybody cares about them at all is if they do happen, and then, of course, people pick them apart. And when I think of a prediction, I think of what I receive spiritually. And this being, I call Gabe, and that is the name I was told to use. And I would like to give you some of the spiritual messages that I have received. One of the very first ones was, the moon is a gentle candle for the earth. Love, Gabe. I think that's beautiful. Jesus is an arm formation, a parent to the soul. Love, Gabe. I will spoon feed you knowledge as you would spoon feed a baby. In turn, feed your fellow man. Love, Gabe. These came in dreams. Sometimes I heard my name called. In a dream, when I wake up in the morning, is usually right then when it was there. And some of them I would write down and some I did not. The prediction that came with, the moon is a gentle candle for the earth, Love, Gabe, was one of my favorites. And I wrote it down. And I think of it quite often, especially on a full moon. But one of the experiences that I had in my dreams, that I was taken to the moon. And as far out as this sounds, in my dream, I walked on the moon and inside of the moon. I was down inside caverns of the moon. I was with a man, being, that I could not actually see, but was there with me, that appeared as a light. He walked with me through the caverns and was showing me over here and over there and there. There was a water-like substance. It wasn't water, but yet it was a water-like substance that was there. It had a shine and a silky feeling to it. He told me that there was a water-like substance in many places in the universe, as well as deep inside of the moon. Well, I know as of today, no water has been discovered on the moon. And we've only just recently found water. And we're not even sure about it. But I can tell you right now, there's water out there. I have no doubt in my mind. And I was told these things many years ago, in the early 80s, on some of these predictions. The moon is a gentle candle for the earth came in the early 80s. So the experience from the late 60s, early 70s of the UFO and in the the thoughts and the messages that I have received have been an ongoing